I'm Jeff Phelps, Dan Manigan in for Andy today. Gentleman who covers all things for the Beacon Journal. You can read all of his work at ohio.com. Former Browns beat writer for the Beacon. Joins us right now on the Make It Right Call Kyle Wright hotline. He is Mr. Nate Ulrich. Hello, Nate.
How are you, Nate?
Hey, how's it going, guys?
It's
Doing
going
real
well.
man.
Good to have you with us. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Good to hear from you.
So we get the combine. Here we go with a new head coach and the same general manager and everything else. And the Browns have needs and needs like crazy. Nate, if you're Andrew Berry right now, you're going into this offseason thinking mainly what as far as improving your team?
Well, I'm thinking offense. I mean, I get best player available, but usually you like to marry it with a need. And obviously the defense has been really good, and you need help at, obviously, offensive tackle and wide receiver more than anything. And I think that's a big reason why they hired Todd Monken. They weren't really shy about it. You know, that when it came down to it, it was like, hey, we really need to build this offense from the ground up here. So, he had the best offensive plan, obviously all the expertise and background as an offensive coach. So I think that's also going to be the theme of the offseason when it comes to acquiring talent. And I think that's what they're going to be looking at first and foremost in the draft.
Nate, what do you make of the youth movement that seems to be taking place on the offensive side of the ball?
Well, it's very interesting because my main criticism of Andrew Berry has been there's been a couple. One, I know he had a really good draft in 2025, but in my mind, he's 1 for 6 in drafts. Okay, now some of those drafts are harder to make hay in because you gave up the first-round picks in the Deshaun Watson trade. I get that, but still, your middle-round picks and your later-round picks, I understand the hit rate isn't as high on those rounds, but still – I just don't think his track record is strong enough in the draft. Second of all, he left the Browns in such a vulnerable position at offensive line where basically the whole offensive line, is hidden free agency other than like DeJuan Jones. So that is a huge problem. Obviously, the receiving corps also in bad shape. But the youth movement is going to happen, right? Because you have so much money tied up in the Deshaun Watson contract, and they're going to be able to have, money to operate with this offseason. They're going to cut some guys with, post-June 1 designations. They're going to restructure Watson. They're going to be able to free up money that way from a salary cap standpoint. But you're still so behind the 8 ball. So I think a lot of the youth movement is out of necessity because, you're in this situation where you have this offensive line that needs completely rebuilt, with maybe the exception of like DeJuan Jones, and also just the salary ramifications of that trade you made in March of 2022. So Andrew Berry called the Browns front office offensive line snobs a couple of years ago. Well, I want to see actions back up those words because they've really put themselves in a situation this offseason where they must prioritize it. And I don't think they can cut any corners. They really got to go all in. I would not be shocked or have anything against if they would draft 2 offensive tackles in the first round. I don't think it'll happen. I think one of them has to be an offensive tackle, one of those 2 picks, 6 of 24. But just the situation they're in, show that you're O-line snobs and really go out and address this hole that you've dug.
Nate, I think they could do that, and I think I would say, you would say, Dan would say, and any Browns fan who's watched his team would say, okay, you did something to help this team. The question I have is, they haven't really drafted anybody on the offensive line. They haven't drafted anybody high, but even the guys they've drafted haven't really hit. I like DeJuan Jones, but DeJuan's been injured so much. Do you think they can identify a lineman to take in the first round?
That's a great question, and it goes back to my point about it. Andrew Berry has not been good enough at drafting. With the exception of the 2025 draft. Yeah. Now, let's hope he found something in his process there that he can carry forward. And obviously the Haslams are banking on that by keeping him because they very well could have cleaned house. We've seen them fire head coach and GM. They opted to keep the GM in this case. So, obviously, Andrew Berry's going to get a chance to show that 2025 wasn't a fluke, even though right now on his resume it is the outlier. So let's see. Now, here's just a little idea I have. We get all kinds of consultants in the NFL. God, I mean, you name it.
Isn't that true?
It's a gig I want.
Yeah.
the clock consultant, the challenge consultant, whatever it is. Like, what about some O-line consultants? You're in this situation where you're going to have – if Joel Bitonio comes back, you're going to have him coming back, but that's an if. He's deciding right now. DeJuan Jones is under contract. Other than that, it's like a clean slate. Like, get Joe Thomas. George Warhop, I don't think, is going to feel threatened by Joe Thomas because George Warhop coached Joe Thomas in Cleveland. Now he's back as offensive line coach, and those guys love each other. I mean, Joe Thomas has been ultra complimentary of George Warhop. Get Joe Thomas in. Get George Warhop. Lean on some other guys who maybe are out of the league. I'm just throwing out like a former O-line coach who's not in coaching right now for the Browns, but knows his stuff, has been around forever. Is like a Bob Wiley. Just not him specifically per se. He might be up for it, but I'm just saying, like, minds like that, offensive line minds who have been it forever. Get some little committee, whatever you want to call it, together. To help them identify. To answer your question, Jeff, I think they could use the help.
One thing I keep going back to here, you had Jim Schwartz, who you could have hired as head coach. But as you said, Nate, you bring in Todd Monken because the offense needs so much work. The big thing to me that we don't know is what does Todd think about the quarterbacks who are here? And he said all the right things. You're not going to walk in the door and go, I think fill in the blank's not very good. You're not going to do that. But I wonder what he thinks, and I wonder what he's telling Andrew Berry. What's your gut tell you about what he thinks of what he's inherited here and what might be coming? Because they both said external options.
Yeah, I think he thinks that he has nothing but question marks right now, right? And how could you think anything other than that? I mean, obviously, I think, and you saw the interaction the Browns put it on social media between Todd Monken and Shedeur Sanders, and we know that Baltimore's interest in the draft is well documented, and obviously with Todd being part of that process, I think he finds Shedeur Sanders is someone who's worth developing, and I would agree with that. Now, you can't say he's the answer. You can't say, we're putting all our eggs in this basket, but worth developing, yes, and I think that that's how he's looking at it. And with Deshaun Watson, it's just nothing but question marks. Because of the injury history, because of the time off. I mean, he came to the Browns with time off. Then he had more time off under contract with the Browns with suspension. And then shoulder, twice ruptured Achilles. So, I mean, who knows what you're going to get there, right? So, and when he did play, by the way, it wasn't that great, right? I mean, it was mediocre at best, very, very poor a lot of the times. There were some highs. Obviously, one of those highs came in Baltimore when he led him to that comeback win. Todd Monken on the other side of the coaching battle there. So he saw that, has that in his mind. So I'm sure is fascinated by the possibility of what if, But it really is just a concept right now. It's not practical. We don't know until we see him on the grass if it's ever going to be the Deshaun Watson of old. That seems so far removed that you definitely can't count on it. So I think, you're going to say outside options because you have nothing but question marks now.
Nate Ulrich, Akron Beacon Journal, joining us on the Make It Right, Call Kyle Wright hotline. All right, now you've been covering a bunch of Cleveland Cavaliers as well for the Akron Beacon Journal. Since the James,
good stuff too, Nate.
And doing a really nice job on top of that. Since we're all kind of adjusting and all that stuff, what has been the biggest change that you've seen to this point with adding James Harden to this core of talent?
Well, Jared Allen has been reinvigorated. I understand they're coming off a loss in Oklahoma City where he needed to rebound better along with Evan Mobley. So, I want to see how this plays out against some of the better opponents coming up. Tomorrow I'll be at the game, at Rocket Arena against the Knicks. That's going to be one. Obviously, Pistons coming up later this week. But, I think that the pick and roll combo with Jared Allen has really been eye-opening. I think Donovan Mitchell, who has been, I think, kind of underrated as far as just the leader, the face of the franchise, how all in he has been on Cleveland. A lot of skepticism about whether he would stay. He obviously committed, and we'll see if he does again. But I think that the James Harden thing was done to, give Donovan that belief that this franchise is going to keep taking these swings year after year. They took a swing before the trade deadline last year. Obviously, getting DeAndre Hunter didn't work out. So guess what? They admitted it in a hurry, and then they took another swing, obviously a bigger one, getting James Harden this year, and then a smaller one, getting Dennis Schroeder and Keon Ellis from the Kings, in that DeAndre Hunter trade. So I guess the point I'm trying to make is the big difference is I just think that the vibe is completely different. The energy is different. You got Donovan Mitchell looking at evidence that you're going to continue to go for it, and when things don't work, you're going to pivot, adjust, and then take another swing or two. And on the court, it's been Jared Allen and just how he looks like a different guy lately.
Nate Ulrich joining us from the Beacon Journal, Ohio.com, where you can read all of Nate's work. What's the biggest thing that Kenny Atkinson has to polish up before they get to the playoffs, Nate? And you're right. I agree completely about Jared Allen. And Mobley's coming back. There's that. And then there's the bench rotation as well. And, we're seeing guys who maybe should be getting minutes, not getting minutes. Craig Porter, Larry Nance, Thomas Bryant, so far anyway. Well, if you're Kenny, what are you focusing on over the next 6 weeks or so?
Well, I think you hit one of those points, Jeff. I mean, Evan Mobley just 2 games back from the second calf injury of the season, so he's on a minutes restriction, obviously. How do you unlock him with James Harden the way that you have with Jared Allen? And can you? The two bigs question has been out there forever, and obviously they made it work last year in the historic regular season. But when it's mattered most, we still haven't really seen it click on all cylinders. And like I said yesterday, it's like, okay, the rebounding overall, you look at the box score, this and that, and you're like, okay, they're even with Oklahoma City. But when you dig in deeper and you look at crunch time and you look at what actually unfolded in the fourth quarter, to me, they lost that game for a couple of reasons. One, obviously once you get past that slow start with the 10 turnovers in the first quarter, you make up a bunch of ground. But in the fourth quarter, you're not rebounding well. The Oklahoma City gets a bunch of crucial offensive rebounds. Oklahoma City ends up out rebounding you in the fourth quarter, and then open threes. I saw a bunch of uncontested open threes, and they have I know that they, SGA, was out yesterday, and his running mate was out yesterday. Jalen Williams. But look at that. The type of guy they have has been problematic to the Cavs for years now, and it's like, who do you have to guard the big athletic wings? You got Dean Wade, who I like as a 3-and-D guy, but he's the guy who just can't stay healthy consistently. So can he be there? Because after him, then it's like Jalen Tyson. And I'm a huge advocate for what Jalen Tyson has done and thinks he deserves all the opportunities because he's really earned them. And I think he plays with an edge. But what does that look like in the playoffs? Still remains to be seen. So I think it's figuring out Evan Mobley with James Harden and Jared Allen and unlocking that, and then the wings and how to combat the long athletic wings that you're probably going to have to face in the playoffs, especially if you get matched up with somebody like Boston, because I think you've been exposed time and again, and yesterday was another reminder.
Nate, always did a great job covering the Browns for the Beacon. Love your work as a sports columnist, and we thank you for being with us today. You can follow Nate on X at by Nate Ulrich. It's BYNATE. And then ULRICH. You can read him at Ohio.com and in the Beacon Journal. Nate, great to have you with us. Thank you.
Appreciate the time, Nate.
All right, thanks, guys. Take care.
Nate Ulrich joining us on the Make It Right Call Kyle Wright hotline.